Hello, I hope that you are having a wonderful day. Now, of course, we are starting this week by taking care of some existing obstacles that haven't been addressed. Now, as you know, I started Plan A, it's been over a decade after learning so much about myself when an employment situation took a certain or abrupt turn for the worst. I'll put the different. It wasn't the worst because we were embarking upon a societal shift that meant that we were interacting with something that we had not quite prepared for. And some of us saw things before others did. And imagine that. You're in the midst of this abrupt change. However, so many people around you are not anticipating what is unfolding right before you. Well, here we are. We have embarked upon this influencer mentality, which is great. If I like Starbucks and I set a great precedence for others, then guess what? Perhaps they'll appreciate Starbucks and great quality products as much as I did. It'll become a part of their day. Well, it's also a shareable economy. That means that, yes, we're going to go to Starbucks on one day and then Smoothie King on another day. And then we're going to embrace a completely different entity altogether. And that's a great way to think about prosperity, which benefits everyone. Now, there are still some pockets that remain unlearned. you know, um, Most of my growth actually occurred when under the guidance or working with leaders who understood that feeding into me or my development was just as important as my delivery of excellence in support of the organization. This led to a few pivotal moments, and it was just an amazing learning opportunity for me. Especially when you are evolving, you're developing along the way, and if you're working with exceptional leadership, that becomes a part of your identity as well, which has been an extreme benefit for me. Well, I have actually continued along that path, and by extracting things throughout my learning journey that I felt would provide a great window of opportunity to get others functionally ready for where we are today. That means that there's some behaviors that have to be released, okay? Some behaviors have to be released because everything that you're doing is now viewed, it's shareable, you're on somebody's camera, and no one really has a lot of energy that they would like to exert on those areas that bring about trouble or stress, because that is going to age you faster than anything. Now, my successes started with, first of all, my wellness journey. And I noticed that after separating from my last employer, I noticed that there were several things that I appeared to have absorbed or taken in throughout that course or that period of over a decade there. There were habits, and my life had become a routine. Okay, just the whole family structure, there were changes that took place, and everything was suddenly routine. And before I even know it, I felt like I aged beyond my actual numeric identifier, which was very troubling. Well, nonetheless, after deciding to release myself of those toxins, I began to target and address things. And I'm telling you, it was a full time job, it was a full time effort. So while benefiting and realizing that, oh, the benefit does last beyond this particular moment, I began to actually pull things from my learning experience that would create a opportunity that was easier, it was more simple for others to adopt. I wanted to walk in alignment with people who were similar to me, but not everyone around me had progressed or they hadn't advanced to that level of internal awareness. And it seems to be impossible to do when so much of your time or your energy is directed to one particular thing, or if it's busyness, or work. It's absorbing a lot of your time and a lot of your energy, so you're not able to do a lot with those strict routines that require support of certain things nonstop. Well, throughout my journey, I have been exposed to other things, and they are not as great. And the other things are that there are people who are disappointed with the outcome of their decisions. Okay, they don't leave them with a lot of flexibility, and they tend to do things that are appearing to be rather manipulative. You know, I never feel as if I have to control others, but I do need to control their ability to interact with me. So it means that I am walking in alignment with what I appear to be, inside out. And there are others who have decided to take a path that differs. So the outcome of that path is the extent of the accessible result for them. Okay? And so if something that is wide open for you because you have adapted to the tremendous window of opportunity that is in front of you, and you have also learned to connect with people differently. Okay? So when we're talking about things, like technology, a technical solution approach versus one that is physical in nature, your reach is not going to go very far. So by looking at where the situation was, where I found myself career wise, I knew that there were a few things that I needed to address. For starters, it was my work experience. I didn't need to wait or be dependent upon an industry to pick me. I knew what service I had to provide. I knew what level of professionalism I carried, and I didn't want to put a middle manager, a director, or CEO. I didn't want to put them in charge of my life, okay? Because I was finished, I graduated beyond some of the apparent shows that don't return much when considering the investment that you have made and everything that you're able to deliver. Now, I have also learned to be culturally fit. It means that I am very comfortable with being who I am, and I have appreciation for so many others. I do understand that most successful teams, it includes a mix of so many different people because you're thinking in terms of a technical solution, but you're doing it in reality, okay? So you cannot just think about oneself and make a huge investment in just oneself, okay? I'm just going to do this and it's only going to benefit women, okay? I'm going to do this and it's only going to benefit people who are just like me. That's not going to go as far as a solution that is extensive and it accommodates so many others. So one thing that I learned about business is that you have to be wide open. It's like a faucet versus a Niagara Falls, you know, an extensive body of water that can serve many others instead of the faucet or the solution that is in your house. My approach for connecting with different age groups, it involved a number of methods, and there were things that I could deliver on. Just a number of things that I could deliver on, and I tend to embrace those areas. I am so excited about okay? But it seems as if the story that is attached to some of my best effort is that it is credited to others. And I did want to take this moment or this window of opportunity to correct that because I am not an employer of an organization. And people who are employed, they have an employer, they would not be able to extend the amount of time that I have put into designing solutions that work for me and Planates. So people who have full-time jobs, they're not able to have full-time jobs and then another full-time job and a half. Now, delivering the sprint activities, that's definitely a part-time effort, but that is after you have done all the work. So no one is going to be able to work a full-time job and deliver for their employer and then take on the full-time and a half responsibility of Planates. Another finding is that the mindset of an employee versus someone who is organizing on a different level. It's completely different. And what I have found when dealing with or monitoring activity that takes place in many families is that the criteria that they are using to have this overarching leadership over others, it's actually just putting the brakes on the progress that some people make. It is so interesting to listen to seniors and adults credit effort that is from me and Planates, and they're crediting it to a larger organization. So suddenly, they're not hovering and copying me. They're not duplicating or abusing my effort. Um, they really believe that it was the other way around, which is completely untrue. And I do have the original, all originals to confirm that. Okay? Now imagine having an employee who you learn has been using AI or other sources since we're all connected, and it gets you into some legal licensing troubles because of their approach. A simple agreement means that use of our products would benefit both your organization and us as well, which that is the fair way to do business, even in the sharing economy, because we don't share money and it does cost a great amount to get things done, okay? It costs a lot because whereas we have to pay for access to ensure that we're able to deliver some things, everyone else needs to get accustomed to doing the same thing. Yeah, the economy is shareable, but our bank accounts are not. Well, another interesting thing or interesting finding is that some of us, we tend to grow. So we grow beyond a numeric age, okay? So we become wise because we have leveraged benefit of someone else's knowledge or their level of awareness, whether it be your grandparents, whether it be your aunts, uncles or whatever. You learn from people when they are sharing knowledge with you, okay? And so then you put your own spin upon things that you learn, you mix it with what you have experienced, and you're able to create a shortcut for another generation. But you're not giving them an answer, you're just exposing them to a level of awareness that would take much longer to acquire. You're not going to have the level of awareness unless you are wide open. So you're busy, your routine, it's going to work, that's fine. We applaud that. But when you venture into the area of creating or supporting a solution that benefits others, you have to think about others first, okay? So I tell people, you may not work with people who are focusing on service delivery and providing a great experience or a great product, that is the goal of the organization. Okay? It's service delivery. So you're thinking about your customers, the people who are benefiting from you, or the people who should benefit. You're not thinking about money. And I hear so many people, they come to me and they say their goal is to make money. And I already know you can't work with me. You cannot work with me. So keep your money, keep your time, and you focus on that area. But that's not for this area. Because through long term experience, I realized the money comes. Okay? Money comes. And if you are magnetically attracting that, but you connect with people who are focusing on just money and not service delivery or benefit of others, you are going to experience some blockage because their focus is money. And that means there's a huge risk or huge chance of them blocking, wedging, intercepting yours, or focusing on something that should not be priority. Okay? So, we talk facts and figures. Now, a general license agreement for an organization, it could convert to, an experience that is worth several thousands of dollars. And I'm talking about many, but there are people who perhaps they are paid, weekly, monthly, or what have you, and it's hard for them to embrace the idea of delivering a service and being paid for many months, at once. But that is expected, okay? And it is not unusual because even long ago it was expectation, okay? But there are people who appear to be hired, they are leaders in other organizations, but they are relying very heavily on the benefit people who are outside of the organization because that convenience is now accessible. And this is where we are today. But unfortunately, it often stems, and I'm going to say breach, it is stemming from people who already have connection to you because they have to have awareness of you. I don't think that people are just searching for you randomly and they always find, I'm going to say me, I'm not going to use you, they always find me. It's by word of mouth. And I have learned that so many people who have been connected to me are the ones who are extending these invitations, which I have a problem with. Okay? And so people have to learn to stay in their lane. I'm not impressed by people with full bank accounts that hold profits or revenue that is connected to me or others. I'm not impressed by it, okay? I'm not impressed by those who have gotten really comfortable to benefiting off me, so much so that you create a narrative that is completely untrue, as if I'm not capable. I'm the most capable person many of them will ever meet, okay? However, it has reached a point to where I cannot tolerate nonsense because I have recognized the fact that it begins to take over my life. We're not going to trade lives because I have made an investment that allows a return that I should experience. Now, I think I spoke about people who choose a religion. They choose a religion and that's what they support. Well, I do believe that people who have ascended or they have grown outside of a box of religion, it means that, and my analogy was, okay, you go to the grocery store for your apples, or you have a direct connection to an orchard, that could be managed or run by a peer or someone that you know. That is how religion looks. It will be going to a specific grocery store. you still end up with the same thing, or you should, if you are absorbing the experience that is being shared with you. So you should also have the same outcome. But there's some people who are operating and they're able to go to several orchards to get what it is that they need. And it's because they have that connection, okay, that allows them to do so. But it is a personal experience, but it does allow people to show up as they are. You know, we should both end up on the same path, but oftentimes we don't. And it is not the person who's going to the orchard, it's not necessarily their responsibility to drag people out of the grocery store or demonstrate, the difference between, the apples that are from certain locations, and, you don't have to share what is preferred by because they figure it out, or that is the plan for one's life, is that they figure it out. Well, unfortunately, we have run into other issues and concerns. There is Dance and Waves, and that was my way of connecting with, a younger group. But you want to give people a visual that they're able to carry throughout. They're able to carry it with them. Now, every single after dinner met that we have in connection to the Sprint Learning events seems to lead to, it brings about this competitive spirit, which is, it's very unusual, okay? So the Sprint Learning event, for like the pattern language that we're releasing this summer to select groups, it's not about their remarkable event flag, okay, which in this case is a graffiti. So you have overgrown people trying to design or create something that is better than a 7-year-old. And it is quite unusual. We're not in the business of making or designing t-shirts. That's not what we're in the business of. It's about pattern language and getting these young developing minds to be exposed to something different. We want them to recognize things that most people go all their life and they don't see it. You don't see the connection. Okay, guess what? Around your block, it's probably a rectangle. And, the roof line on your house probably resembles a couple of triangles that are put together. And when you're able to connect learning experience to other areas, it provides a great deal of practice that allows you to get more comfortable with taking information from different sources and combining it to leverage it in a meaningful way. You apply it to your own life, okay? But it is to benefit you. So you don't need to hover. You don't need to monitor people, because if you look at the answer, you really aren't acquiring skills that allow you to be a great decision maker. So copying your way into a leadership responsibility could create a dire situation for everyone who reports to you, okay? Just think about that. And so, but the manipulative, that approach is something that so many people embrace, but it is learned. It is learned. So what I have become more aware of is that it's almost like you can be like Don. You can walk in any environment, but you are not going to adapt to things that are not applicable to your path, okay? So that means that you could be in the presence of things that you don't want around you for an extensive period of time, and it's not going to bother you. It's just like walking through a smoke-filled room. It's not going to make you a smoker because you have already cleaned yourself and mentally you respect your body, to the point to where it doesn't allow you to become that, okay? So, I mean, there's so much that are going, it's just happening, okay? So imagine having been born and you were a triplet. You know what I mean? You're one of three. But you know, you're really not. But you have people who claim to be your in the womb buddy. You know, that tends to happen when you have grown beyond recognition. That that is a possibility because your effort that takes decades, you know, to master is suddenly generating an outcome that people want instantly. And it is not possible, okay? So when you embrace or you support certain things, you have to accept the fact that your outcome, that's your outcome. You don't get to withhold or block benefit that belongs to someone else and make decisions that are crippling to both of you all. Okay? You don't get to do that. And this is about where we are now because we had some generational leaders that actually could see beyond what was occurring during that period. And it is quite telling when you benefit from a decision that someone made on your behalf generations ago. And it is quite telling when there are people who are present today. Their only role is to execute things as they were written. But instead of doing that, they are overtaken by some other thinking, and it leads to manipulating the instructions as provided. It entails them trying to breach access instead of following the instructions as desired, and their behaviors become very troubling because not only is it disturbing to them, it is disturbing to the beneficiary or the intended beneficiary who suddenly has to fight in a manner that no one anticipated. So there are people who are still manipulative, and you know that they're on a different path, okay? And the crediting of effort is a definite no-no, okay? Definite no-no. So here's where I am now. There's so many people who are not really ready, and many of us, we don't work over a decade to only recreate the parts of our lives that we were naturally rescued from. That's not what we do. So when you have so many people who are not quite, they haven't ascended, and they begin putting themselves in this employee minded um, leadership role, whereas they are making decisions and structural changes that impact you, it's indeed a problem, okay? Only the leader can lead. And when you don't embrace an outcome because you haven't experienced it, it's really hard for you to just position yourself in a place of empowerment with a negative impact on others, especially me. Okay? So it's dancing waves. This is what I would like to see occur in the fall. But guess what? Since no one around me is ready for that, I have to throw it over the fence and put it in the hands of someone else who's responsible, they're ready, and they have reach that extends beyond me. Same for Reed. So the first thing we need to do is go through the exercise and let people see how it benefits you. And then it's much easier for you to convince others that it is a great avenue in support of clearing or resetting one mentally. Now, I have also experienced the teens. You know, they want instant gratification, and whatever it is that is allowed, whatever it is that they are trained for, that is the behavior that they tend to mimic. And a lot of times it is behavior that they're mimicking that is not sustainable for them because they won't start from within, so they can't generate a desired outcome without attempting to duplicate someone else, which leads to a very miserable existence. So hopefully we'll be able to continue later, and I'm looking forward to meeting with each of you soon. Have a great one.